Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to my podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the yummiest or best mana rocks, or, well, my favorites. So, let's start off with a classic. A lot of commander decks utilize Liquid Metal Torque. It's a 2 mana artifact that taps to add colorless, or it has another ability. Target non-land permanent becomes an artifact in addition to its other types until the end of turn. Now, the reason why I like this one a lot is because some colors have hard time interacting with certain types and love interacting with other types. So a lot of their removal spells can hit artifacts, but can't always hit creatures or enchantments or other types. And sometimes that removal spell that you have in your hand can be utilized extremely well if it hits another type. Anyways, on to my next pick. Skyclave Relic. This is a 3 mana artifact with Kicker 3. It has Indestructible, and when Skyclave Relic enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, create 2 tap tokens that are copies of Skyclave Relic, and it has add 1 mana of any color. Now, the reason why I like this one is twofold. The keyword Indestructible really helps in situations where you might be board wiped, which happens quite often in Commander, and all your artifacts are destroyed and you're left crying. Now, you don't want to be left crying, so Indestructible is a little bit of protection against those board wipes. It also helps when you draw this card late game and you can sink the 3 extra mana into it to create some extras. Just a nice little upside on top of the Indestructible mana rock. Now, my next pick is Hourglass of the Lost. This one is a 2 generic, 1 white for an artifact that has, add a white, put a time counter on Hourglass of the Lost. And it has another ability to remove X time counters from Hourglass of the Lost and exile it. Return each non-land permanent mana value X from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery. Now, the reason I like this card is similar to the last card, but a little bit different. Board wipes are quite common in Commander. Now, a lot of board wipes will wipe away multiple types, but some of the most efficient, cheapest ones will only wipe away creatures. Cards like Blasphemous Act, Blasphemous Edict. These are cards that only hit creatures. And having an artifact that can recur some of your cheap creatures, especially if they have Enter the Battlefield effects, or they are a specific theme like Shadowborn Apostles, you can get some great effect out of Hourglass of the Lost and rebuild your board state extremely quickly if you get lucky. Now, this one might be a little controversial. This is a 4 mana artifact creature called Solemn Simulacrum. Now, this card is printed in a lot of precons, so you may already know what it does, but in case you don't, I'll read it. When this creature enters, you may search your library for a basic land card, put that card onto the battlefield tap, then shuffle. When this creature dies, you may draw a card. Now, a lot of people typically think of mana rocks in the traditional sense of it's an artifact that can't be hit by creature board wipes, and I kind of disagree. I think if you're, I just think that mana rocks are artifacts that are like artifacts that make or get mana and are more resilient to most board wipes. And I think Solemn covers all four of those bases, my bad. Because one, it is resilient to board wipes in two ways. It's resilient to creature board wipes. When it dies, it replaces itself by drawing you a card. And it's resilient to board wipes because the land that it gets isn't going to get blown up to most board wipes. It's also, it has artifact synergies and just is pretty good. Now, the next card after that is this card, another controversial pick, Archaeomancer's Map. It's 2 generic, 1 white. When Archaeomancer's Map enters the battlefield, search your library for 2 basic plains cards. Reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, if that player controls more lands than you, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. Now you may think to yourself, hey, wait a minute. What if I'm going first? Or, wait a minute. What if my opponent doesn't play a land? Which, that would be kind of silly of your opponent, but they can technically do that. Well, I just think these are rare scenarios that can be extremely mitigated. Now, going first isn't that rare of a scenario, but you're in what I mean. Okay, so picture this: you're in white, and you're playing first. That means you're most likely going to have the most lands for the first few turns of the game, unless you're up against a green opponent. In which case, your green opponent is probably going to be trying to ramp pretty early on with land ramp. If you don't have any opponents in your pod that are playing green, there are these cards called bounce lands. Now what bounce lands do is they tap for 2 mana, but when they come down, you have to pick up one of your other lands. This means it's easier for you to get Archaeomancer's Map's trigger. There's also other lands besides bounce lands that can give you similar effects. Lands that tap for more than 1 mana, but when they come in, you have to sacrifice lands. These cards all make Archaeomancer's Map even better. So it's essentially, basically, a mana rock. My next card, I know it looks like 2 cards, but it's actually 1 card, so let me explain it. It's 2 generic, 1 blue, legendary artifact. Whenever Flowing Well enters the battlefield, mill 2 cards, then draw 2 cards. Descend 8. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 8 or more permanent cards in your graveyard, transform Everflowing Well. Now you may think, isn't that kind of hard to transform? And my answer to that is sandbagging. Now you may think, what's sandbagging? Sandbagging is when you hold a card in your hand until a point in the game in which it will be useful. And second off, there's plenty of blue themes that want cards in their graveyard. Oh, and you may think, but wait. What does transform do? Because I forgot to explain that, and I'm so sorry. So what transform does is you flip the card over, and there is a backside on the card. And the backside to Everflowing Wells is the Myriad Pools. And the Myriad Pools is a legendary artifact land that taps to add blue, and whenever you cast a permanent spell using mana produced by the Myriad Pools, up to 1 other target permanent you control becomes a copy of that spell until end of turn. I like this And you may think to yourself, only artifact strategies can use that. I disagree. I think just having any extra mana, especially in blue for 3 mana, is really, really good. And it's like, it draws you a card, which is like solemn levels, but for 1 less mana. And I just love it a lot. And I'm gonna try to jam this in more decks. Now, this next card is one of my personal favorites, and I have been like, people have told me this card is so bad, but I think it's really good. It's Mirren Safe House, 3 colorless. It's an artifact, like all these other cards are, because they're mana rocks. As long as Mirren Safe House is on the battlefield, it has all activated abilities of all land cards in all graveyards. Now, you may think to yourself, people aren't trying to destroy their lands. And you're kind of right, because in Magic the Gathering, there's these cards called fetch lands. Fetch lands are cards that sacrifice themselves to find other lands. And Mirren Safe House can actually copy those abilities to sacrifice itself to find other lands. And you may be thinking, but green does that for 2 mana. And you're right. And that's the problem. Because other colors don't really get efficient land ramp at that cheap without having to jump through some sort of hurdle. So Mirren Safe House is just 1 more mana than the good green cards if you're not in a green deck. And you may think to yourself, but people aren't running that many fetch lands, or some fetch lands are expensive. And you're kind of right. Not everybody runs fetch lands, and some fetch lands are expensive, but there's cheap budget alternatives. And you can run those to make your Mirren Safe House better. Plus, you can run it in a mill theme to make it even more consistent. Or you can run single target land destruction to blow up the most powerful lands in Commander and make your Mirren Safe House even better. So those are some things you might keep in mind if you're going to try to jam this card as hard as I try to jam this card. Next card, I know everybody knows this card, but I have to talk about it just because it's one of my personal favorites. It's Cursed Mirror. It's 2 generic, 1 red. It has, at a red, as Cursed Mirror enters the battlefield, you may have it become a copy of any creature on the battlefield until end of turn, except it has haste. And there are a lot of good creatures in Commander. In fact, Solemn, I'm only half joking. Solemn is a good target to copy with this, but it's not one of the best creatures in Magic of all time. It's just one of the best colorless ramp spells. It's really good to copy your opponent's best creature sometimes, even if it's just for 1 turn, because there's lots of enters the battlefield triggers on creatures, when there's creature attacks on creature, or when this creature dies, if you want to do some extra spicy synergies with artifacts, because artifacts are sometimes known for sacrifice themes and bringing themselves back from the graveyard to get multiple triggers. Like Duretti is a good commander option if you're thinking about stuff like that, but can also just Goblin Welder is another card that synergizes really well with this card. There's just a lot of fun cards that work really well with Cursed Mirror in a lot of themes, but it's also generically powerful just because of the type of creatures that we get printed in Commander. Alright, I have one more card for you, and this one might be my hottest take of all. Heaped Harvest. 2 generic, 1 green. When Heaped Harvest enters, and when you sacrifice it, you may search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tap, then shuffle. It also has 2 tap, sacrifice Heaped Harvest, you may gain 3 life. Now you may be thinking to yourself, wait a minute, didn't you say green ramped really well without artifacts earlier? And I did say that. Green does ramp really well without artifacts, but this has additional synergies that you can cram into your decks that other green ramps doesn't really get. First off, it's 2 lands. Now you may be thinking, but you have to sacrifice it in order to get 2. That's a little bit hard. And you're kind of right. I do think you would probably want to run this in a list dedicated to sacrificing your artifacts. But if you're in that sort of deck, put it in. It will perform wonders. But also, green is the color of artifact destruction. Mass and targeted. Now, I don't think you'll want to target your Heaped Harvest, but mass artifact destruction in green is very prevalent. There's some really popular creatures in Commander that do it, and there's some really popular sorceries. I don't know if there's any instances. There might be. If there are, point it out to me in the comments and make me look like a little bit silly. So I think getting the upside on this card isn't that difficult, especially if you're in an artifact sacrifice deck. Now, that is all my crazy hot takes for this episode. But if you have any crazy hot takes about your favorite mana rocks or cards that you think are basically mana rocks, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'll read your comments and I think they'll be really cool. So thank you for listening to me and my little rant today. Next time it'll be longer if I have a host. It's just when I don't have a host as a co-host. It's really hard for me to just spitball ideas, and it makes it hard to bounce ideas off and be a longer episode. But thanks for watching. Bye!